Hello, it's Friday, and in case you haven't noticed, the religious right has turned the United States military into an instrument of theocracy, much to the detriment of civil liberties and national security. One instance of religion's detriment to our military, of which you're probably all aware, is don't ask, don't tell, a policy that makes it inconceivable or illicit for an openly gay person to serve in the armed forces. There's never any real justification for this. There are some who will try and claim it's not homophobia by saying that sexuality should be a private matter, but they have no such restriction for openly heterosexual people, so it's clearly an instance of heterosexism. And there's the fact that it is not only detrimental to civil liberties and the Constitution, but to our national security in the form of it resulting in the discharge of valuable Arabic translators for which we can't find many replacements. In fact, Don't Ask, Don't Tell has, I think, been linked to the 9/11 attacks in that we might have been able to intercept the messages if certain people hadn't been discharged. But that's an issue that looks to be on the way to being fixed. Obama has replied to a letter he received from a soldier that was discharged, and he said that he will try and get something through Congress and follow through on his campaign promise to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So that's good. But there's another form of theocratic use of the military, a proselytizing variant that goes largely unreported, and that is mainly documented by the likes of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. This was highlighted earlier this week when Al Jazeera released tape of an instance where large groups of US soldiers were gathering Bibles that were written in the language of the local Afghans, and they were handing them out to them. And at first the Pentagon tried to respond that this was a distortion, that this was taken out of context, and that the military was following all of their regulations, which specifically state, as the Constitution's Establishment Clause requires, that the U.S. military is not to be used for proselytization purposes. But then, the Al Jazeera network released the complete unedited tapes. And that's where the trouble really comes in, because it unequivocally shows the chaplains telling the soldiers that they should evangelize, telling them to give these Bibles to people. If only that were the worst of it. There's another instance that was documented a while ago in Iraq, where soldiers wrote in the local language on the truck, I think it was in Arabic, but I'm not sure and I don't want to misrepresent that. They wrote on the truck, "Jesus killed Muhammad," and drove through a city with a megaphone saying this. They then, to anyone who retaliated violently or simply in the way of objecting to this and being offended, they viewed as a satanic enemy and they attacked them. This is madness, and it only turns the local people against us. It breeds terrorism. And this is, I think, one of the points that Christopher Hitchens would like to highlight, probably, is that, if he had the time, had looked at this issue, because the parties of God he talks about that are a risk to us are the parties of Islam, although he does talk about the risk Christianity poses. And if you looked at this, we'll see that the parties of God in America and within our own military are aiding the parties of God abroad who want to kill us. That's a problem. And another thing about this is that the leading organizations of religious fundamentalists in the military have done things to evangelize to their believers and their followers to make them think that anyone who opposes them, anyone who thinks that what they're doing is unconstitutional, is a minion of Satan. I am a tool of Satan. Constitutional scholars are tools of Satan. Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!, which has a report on it to which I've got a link in the sidebar, is a tool of Satan, as are her two guests. By the way, Democracy Now!, you should watch it. It's an excellent independent media source. I've just recently gotten back into it, and I had forgotten just how awesome it is. Anyway, then there's another case that is documented where a military officer preached to his students, or presented a PowerPoint to people in which he attempted to indoctrinate the soldiers into the idea that the USSR based their model of government on Darwinism. In the words of Dr. Tran, "You are telling lies! That was more than 10 lies!" Seriously, it's completely absurd to assert this. Stalin's government, and the Soviets in general, were anti-scientific. They banned the works of Mendel, and likewise most of the works of modern evolutionary biology at the time, in favor of Lysenkoism, which was more easily compatible with their ideology. To say they were based on the works of Darwin is a flat-out lie. Just as it was a lie to do what was presented in the same PowerPoint presentation to the soldiers to train them on being proper purpose-driven American soldiers, as based on Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life, was the general, or I shouldn't be saying general because I don't know what the officer's rank was, but the officer presented them with the idea that the United States was founded upon the Christian faith, which is a pervasive myth that is easily debunked by the fact that so many of our important founding fathers were deists. So, two blatant lies filled with many different sub-lies presented to our troops under a government-sponsored service and a mandatory service for the troops regardless of their religious affiliation. This is absurd, and as I said, creating stupid soldiers who think they're fighting for God's cause in an area where we're not just killing a large enemy, but rather dealing with terrorists and trying to make sure there aren't more terrorists, is dangerous to our security as well. We need to, whether we agree with the military's goals or not, restore the Constitution and restore religious freedom to our military. To do otherwise is to put you not on the right or the left, not on the side of Christianity versus another religion, but rather on the side of unconstitutional and indefensible practices against the Constitution and basic principles of civil libertarianism. Have a wonderful weekend.